Hi guys, welcome back. We are going to be concluding chapter 3 of The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. At the beginning of chapter 3, we met a new character named Emily, who seems to want to be friends with Morgan. She's given Morgan a nickname, calling her Ghost, which is fitting because Morgan doesn't really interact with people. She's just there. So, a fitting nickname. And we've learned a little bit about Emily. She's a white girl, plays hockey, and seems to be really kind. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Chapter 3, we're on page 20. Okay, we'll start at the top. What? I worked on mine all week. They stopped at the classroom door. I need to get an A. Don't you always get A's? Morgan asked. Emily shrugged. I don't get A's. I don't play hockey. That's the rule. Morgan put her hand on the doorknob. She could see through the window that the class was full and ready to start. Mrs. Edwards was at her desk shuffling papers. Want to read mine? Emily asked. Why? I just really want to hear yours, Emily admitted. Thought you'd offer. You read so much. You must be awesome at writing. Oh, I don't. Morgan could feel the poem she'd written last night stuffed into her back pocket. She ripped it out of the Hilroy scribbler that morning and put it there. Just because I read doesn't... I like to write. It's just that... It's all right, Emily said. Don't worry about it. The classroom door swung open. Morgan had been leaning against it and stumbled inside. It made all the kids break out into laughter. Thankfully, Morgan didn't actually fall. But still, damage had been done. Right then, she did want to be a ghost. We're about to start, Mrs. Edwards said. The class settled. Emily walked in and announced to their teacher, we were talking about the assignment. Morgan sat at the front of the class beside the windows that overlooked the skating rink and River Heights Community Center. Okay, we're starting to learn more about what part of Winnipeg the school is in. Talks about it being on by River Heights Community Center. Talks about they can see the skating rink from her school. It talks about how they were waiting when they were walking to school and Eli's sketchbook blew away from him, how it landed on Grosvenor Avenue. Okay? So we're learning what part of Winnipeg of school that she goes to. Okay? River Heights Community Center. With an empty desk behind her, and to the right, she was out of the way. She took her seat and pretended that she couldn't feel kids still looking at her. She pretended they couldn't see her at all. Good morning, ghost. Mrs. Edwards had platinum blonde hair that fell over her shoulders. She always overdressed for school. Today she was wearing a shiny black sequin dress, as if ELA was a cocktail party. Her desk was populated by a cupful of pencils and pens, a framed picture of her husband and son, and 10 books neatly arranged at the front, held in place by wooden lion bookends. All 10 were copies of Lyrics to a Song, a poetry book that Mrs. Edwards had written. The students lined up to hand in their poetry assignments, and Morgan intentionally went to the back of the line. So by the time she arrived at her teacher's desk, there was already a neat stack of poetry. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper. Sorry about that, Morgan cleared her throat. Mrs. Edwards picked Morgan's poem up from the pile as if it was a piece of trash. What's this? My poem, Morgan said. I see. Mrs. Edwards slid the poem against the side of the desk repeatedly to try to flatten it, like it was a bill that a candy machine wouldn't accept. Do you think this is appropriate? Mrs. Edwards asked. No, Morgan whispered. I want to know how much pride you think you have to have in your work, Morgan. I'm I'm sorry, Mrs. Edwards. It won't happen again. You're happy with this? Yes. It wasn't that she hadn't worked hard on the poem. It was just that she'd worked hard on it fast. All right, Morgan, Mrs. Edwards sighed. What do we think about that? The assignment was to write a poem. The assignment didn't say must be handed in on a neat piece of paper or typed up or anything. It was write a poem. And Morgan wrote a poem at home and handed it in to her teacher. All right, Morgan, Mrs. Edwards sighed. The students were left to watch the last part of a film they'd started the day before, Finding Forrester, because Mrs. Edwards announced to her students, I just can't wait to read these beautiful pieces. It was her favorite film, she said last class, because it was about writing and she could relate to it. William Forrester had only ever written one book, and so had she. It's just the life of a writer, she explained. Your work is never really done. Some writers get stuck wanting to do something perfect, and once they think they have, well, lightning doesn't strike twice. Morgan wondered if Mrs. Edwards really thought that lyrics to a song fell into that category, but she had to credit her for even publishing a book in the first place. Mrs. Edwards was efficient. 10 minutes before class ended, she handed back their poems with their grades marked in red. Morgan received hers last. It had no red ink on it whatsoever. See me after class, Mrs. Edwards whispered to Morgan, with what looked to her like an apologetic smile. Why? Morgan looked over her poem as though she might see a red letter somewhere, hidden in the folds of the crumpled marks. Just do, she said. When the bell rang and the classroom had emptied, Mrs. Edwards took Morgan's poem and read it silently. Morgan watched her eyes move back and forth. When she finished, she handed it back. Is it bad? Morgan asked. Mrs. Edwards looked up at Morgan and held her eyes for a moment before reciting, Have all the greatest words been said? Then nothing more to do but hush. No phrases honeyed, sweet as daisies, nor lines to make the crimson rush. Morgan just sat there, hands crossed on top of the desk. Mrs. Edwards cleared her throat. Have all the poems been written? Then nothing more to do but hide. No shields with rhymes as hard as steel. I know what it says, Morgan snapped, but caught her tone. Sorry, Mrs. Edwards. It's just that I know what it says. I thought it was good. What's it about, Morgan? What are you trying to say? It's about, I don't know. Morgan searched for the right words. Writing. It's about not being able to write because, like, everything good's been written already. It's got layers. Is that what you're passionate about? Mrs. Edwards asked. I'm passionate about writing, sure, Morgan said. Technically, the poem's really well done, Mrs. Edwards said. But Morgan, writing is about heart, and I'm not feeling that here. You are so talented. I can see it, but you don't write with any heart. Are you calling me the Tin Man of poetry? Morgan asked. Well, If you are, then I guess that makes me the Wizard of Oz, Mrs. Edwards said. I know you're capable of better. And I'll grade your poem when you've tried again. That's my job as a teacher. This isn't fair. Morgan's chest felt hot. Can't you just give me a B or something? A C plus even? Hand something new in by tomorrow. Write from your heart, not from your head. And I'll grade that for you, Mrs. Edwards said. Morgan felt hot all over her body now. She was back at the dining room table, looking at food made into faces. She wanted to explode. But she heard Eli's voice, asking her why she was mad all the time. It sounded clear, like he was standing beside her. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. I'm not mad all the time. Pardon me? Mrs. Edwards said. Nothing. Fine. I'll do it, Morgan whispered. She stuffed the poem back into her pocket and left the room silently, as though she was moving in whispers too. So Mrs. Edwards, even though, at the beginning of the chapter, she was all cranky because Morgan handed in a piece of writing on a crumpled piece of paper, gave Morgan some really valuable feedback. Writing comes from your heart. Your voice needs to come through in your writing. Yours, your story. And that's what Morgan has to do. However, someone like Morgan who feels empty might struggle to be able to write from the heart and feel her voice in her writing. So that'll be something that we'll see if Morgan can overcome or not. All right, that's the end of chapter 3. As a reminder, you have to complete your fact, question, inference, connection sheet to get it done. All right, talk to you later, guys. Bye.